Global environment and global politics, historical development of environmental politics. Before we go into the issue of environment and politics, let us first think what we understand by environment. In fact, most of the time when we talk about environment, we really talk about nature. That means we will be talking about the Himalayas or Amazon forest or something like that. But nature is there irrespective of existence of human beings. It is there for 4.5 billion years. Within this huge time scale, nature has changed again and again. It has wiped out different kind of living species also. But environment is that part of nature where human civilization is dependent on it from its first days of existence. That means it has used nature for its food, for its shelter, for its clothes and all other things. And human beings have revered nature, also it feared nature because it is also dangerous. There can be wild animals, there can be natural disasters. So the ancient civilization, just talk of Indian and Chinese civilizations, which are the two ancient civilizations which are still continuing, they have kind of organic relation with nature. They revere it. If you see the Chinese civilization, they have this understanding of different kind of natural forces. Indian civilization also starts with revering the sun, the river and other things, which is in fact different from the European civilizations, which is a dominant thinking process today. If you see the ancient Greek, how they saw nature, they saw it that Aristotle will say plant exists for the sake of animals and these animals live for the sake of man. So nature is in fact only for the service of man. And if you go to the Bible, in its text also it says that let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominance over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over the cattle and over all the earth. So there is a concept of dominance of nature. This is a two different kind of understandings of nature and latter environment that we have to understand when we will go to the issue of environmental politics. Now from nature we come to environment. When human civilizations expanded, first when it lit fire, that was the first source of pollution in fact in the nature. It was an artificial thing we did. Then the biggest impact on nature was agriculture. When you do agriculture, what we do basically, you select some specific plant species and then you sow it in the thousands of acres. And you choose those species. So this way, human civilization have impacted the nature and that area is we call environment. This is the environment of human being. And with time, it has expanded. Now human impact has gone to the several kilometers high in the air, in the ozone sphere, or several kilometers down in the ocean. So, whether we like it or not, human civilization is synonymous with pollution. However, for a long time, this pollution was manageable. It was not impacting a large area or the human life that much. But in 19th century, at the start of 19th century, there was a really another kind of scientific and industrial revolution came into being, mostly in Great Britain and then it spread into Europe and then in America. And there you have large number of industries producing new things, producing different kind of things for people, and also it also produced very important thing, what is we call the environmental pollution. In England, it was felt for a long time back, from 200 years back, the England started to feel pollution. The river Thames, which is the most well-known river of the country, flows by the side of the city of London. It lost its most important fish, salmon fish, in 1874. And then, after nearly 100 years, it has again come back. So, this impact of pollution had a also impact on the human mind also, that it's impacting our health, it's impacting our different kind of understanding. So from 1950s onward, there was a thinking that have we gone little bit more wild using this nature, doing our civilization, and we can call from the 60s that environmental age has begun. We can take one very important book called Silent Spring. In the United States, it was published in 1962. It says that the use of insecticides and pesticides are destroying nature, killing birds, and we are trying to control nature, which is very bad for human civilization. Then this idea spread. In 1963, there is a very important book called Small is Beautiful. This is written by Mr. Schumacher, who is a British economist, and he, at the end of his professional career, started a new thinking that this big industrial civilization is not good for human beings. It should have small, self-sufficient economy, and that would be more human-driven, not much machine-driven, and that will also save the nature and stop the environmental pollution. In 1970s, there was a very important report, Club of Rome report. In fact, this report was prepared by a group of engineers from very prestigious MIT and also from other institutes, and they gave an idea that human civilization cannot go on like this because we are extracting too much resources from nature. There is a limit to it, and all this started the new environmental age in the West, in USA and also in the Europe. In fact, in 1971, first time on 22nd April, in USA, Earth Day started to be celebrated, that we are destroying too much of it. These ideas of 1670s made what is the environmental politics or the development politics which we are seeing today from these 70s. Now, it is no doubt that Europe, USA, they are getting polluted. There is a problem of air quality. London has its very well-known smog, and as you say that the rivers were polluted. But the side by side, if you see, the quality of life in Western world also increased, also was very well. If you just compare, the average life expectancy was about in 1850 was about 40 years in Europe. By 1970, that is in this 150 years, when the pollution level has grown several times, their life expectancy increased to 77. If you see the other aspects of quality of life, the amount of food people are eating, amount of leisure time they are getting, the different kind of other amenities of life, have better heating, better movement, all this which makes quality of life was much, much better than what it was 100 years back. So, if we just try to balance it, it may be told in another way that as the pollution have increased, people's quality of life increased. Though it will be very simplistic talk, but that's the reality also. And also those important books which I have just mentioned, in fact, most of their predictions did not go well in latter years. Just take the issue of the first book, which make a sensation in the Western world, that is the silent spring, this is basically against DDT. We all know in India what is DDT. Now, it was argued that DDT was creating a havoc in the nature. But the importance of the thing is that DDT, the Paul Muller, who invented this chemical, he was awarded Nobel Prize in 1945, and it is Nobel Prize Academy says this is one of the rare chemicals which have saved millions of lives. In fact, DDT has eradicated malaria from Europe, part of Middle East and USA. And till now, DDT has no really direct relations with human health. Or let us take the Club of Rome report, which said that all our resources, the important metals, they are going to be finished. So where we are heading? In fact, that was also proved totally wrong. Today, even when we are talking in 2022, we have more reserves of minerals which we have 50 years back, because our machineries, our knowledge of minerals have increased. We can now extract more minerals, and even the cost of all those minerals have gone down. And this whole idea of small is beautiful is not much accepted if you want to go for a modern world. So, here comes the issue of global understanding of environment and politics in a different way. As I said, this 1970 was the start of this environmental awareness about pollution. So, in 1972, the first United Nations Conference on Human Environment was held at Sweden's capital, Stockholm. Note the term human environment. It was the first one at the United Nations, and as the United Nations program, a lot of countries attended it, but significantly, as it was the first one, the awareness was not that much. Only two head of the state was there. One was, of course, it was being held at Sweden. Sweden's Prime Minister was there, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India, she was there. Now, that speech of Mrs. Indira Gandhi in 1972 conference, first international conference, it is still quoted many places and in any environmental debate. What she told, I just quote, "The rich countries may look upon development as the cause of environmental destruction, but to us, it is one of the primary means of improving the environment for living or providing food, water, sanitation and shelter, of making deserts green and the mountains habitable." So, it was a direct challenge to the Western concept of development, as was developing in Western ideas that, this development is not good for people, we have gone too much and others. Mrs. Gandhi says very specifically that we are still underdeveloped. We have to do this development, and that development can only make our environment better. So, this is the start of the global environmental politics. United Nations didn't have another conference in 1982, 10 years back. It held its next conference 20 years back, 2 decades back, 1992 at Rio de Janeiro. And from that on, every 10 years, this conference is held. Now, in 1992 UN conference, the title was Conference on Environment and Development. Note, the term human is missing. Now, by this time, this whole conflict or kind of debates on development and environment has gone wild, because the developing countries, they are having different ideas. The richer countries or Western countries, they have one kind of ideas. But what happened in that United Nations conference, which is very important for environmental politics, is that the two terms was established there. One is sustainable development and another issue is climate change. In this 92 conference, these two terms were introduced, and till today, these two terms mostly used for all kind of environmental discussions, politics, or now in economy or any policy decisions of most of the countries. And there have been, by this time, there have been a increase in number of NGOs, non-government organizations throughout the world, and their major work is done on these two topics, sustainability and climate change. So, to understand environmental politics and its global issue, we need to know what is sustainability and what is climate change. Sustainability, it started from the Brundtland report in 1987. Gro Brundtland was the Swedish Prime Minister. He was a Socialist Party person. She was a Socialist Party person. And this report, which was made by different people, there was a commission. This first brought the term sustainability, which was taken into the 1992 conference. Now, this sustainability initially has a very broad meaning. Meaning is sustainability is meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The term has been used in different ways. This definition has been explained in a different way, but most of the thing in any discussion comes that the development has to be sustainable so that it has its minimum impact on environment and other things when you go on development. It is the mindset of the rich Western society who are tired of affluence. They are utilizing underdevelopment as a sustainable environment. Just like a city person, when go to the village, he or she is very happy, describe it as such a nice place, nice thing. But in fact, they would always live in the city, go to the villages sometimes and praise it. So somehow this Western world to them that development is enough they have done, and the rest of the world should not also go further for development because it is impacting the nature. It is no doubt, it is impacting the nature, but there has to be some way out. And this last 2 decades after 1992, the next after 10 years, there was 2012, again the United Nations Conference on Environment. Then in 2012, there was also another international conference. The topic remains same, sustainable environment. Now, for many of us, we feel that sustainable development means kinds of ridding of poverty. That means a poor man also survive. He or she doesn't die the next day. But is that sustainability is good? This is the most important question which has come to the developing world, that the sustainability is different, meaning is different for a rich Western world and for the poorer world. Next comes the issue of climate change. Now, climate change is a very discussed topic. Basic thing of climate change, that the temperature of Earth is increasing. In fact, we are going through a natural process of Earth cooling, but due to our industrial and other lifestyle, we are emitting too much of carbon dioxide, methane, all these things which are warming the world, which is absorbing the solar heat, all these things. Now, this issue came into discussion in the late 80s, and there is a more or less consensus on this global warming side. But what would be its impact, and what is its impact should be considered in our development process, that has become a very much debatable issue. Global environmental politics has taken this climate change as a main mantra of any discussion. That means whenever you go on for any development project, you have to see how we are impacting the climate. Let's think of power. Now, average consumption of power in an Indian condition per person is 10 to 15 times less than in the Western countries. Now, if tomorrow all our people, 120 crore people, want to use the same quantity of power what is being used in the West, then we need several thousand power plants tomorrow. And what would be the source of those power plants? The fossil fuel. We don't have much alternative till now. And that will have a great impact of climate change. So should we not give power to our own people just because of climate change? So here the debate comes that how much responsibility we have for the climate change for these poor people. If you see the per person carbon dioxide share, emission of carbon dioxide share, it's very well known that for a country like India, it's about 1.2 ton per person per year. Whether in case of United States, it's nearly 10 times, 20 tons per person per year. If you see the Europe, that is also nearly 10 times what we use. So, where there is such a difference between the emission process, whether a climate change issue should be same for all. But important thing is that the climate change is not only being talked as the temperature increasing, it is also being related with different kind of natural disasters. Now, I just give you an example that there is a climate of fear that is being spread through this climate change. I remember that in the decade back we have this devastating hurricane typhoon Aila, and this Aila devastated a part of Indian Sundarban area, also in Bangladesh. Now, there is a conference by Oxfam in Copenhagen again, and there is a Bangladeshi lady, Sarbana Khatun. She was poster girl there, that their houses have been devastated by this Aila, and these are all due to climate change. But if you see the city of Hong Kong, it has more typhoons every year, but there not a single house gets devastated, because these are very modern houses and these are all skyscrapers, not only small houses. So, the Sarvana Khatun's house was devastated not due to climate change. It was devastated because of the poverty. So, not focusing on poverty, we are bringing a climate change fear, so that you have to first focus on that less carbon dioxide emission. Your any kind of development, new vehicle or new process, new fuel, everything has to be climate friendly. It's not bad, but if we lose the focus that development is a priority, there comes the issue of environmental politics. Now, let us think what it has impact on Indian situation. In fact, in 70s, there was one important book came up by two Harvard University professors named Population Boom, and it predicted that in 80s there will be famine throughout India, and in future Indian people will be dying on the streets. Now, in 21st century, India is one of the biggest exporter of food in the world, wheat and rice both. So as I said, these kind of predictions all went false, and this whole concept of sustainability was an anti-development thought which were also brought to India by the Western government efforts and hundreds of NGOs, non-government organizations, which are funded by different kind of Western sources. Just Indian politics, environmental politics was quite dominated by one or few people for some time. One of the person was Ms. Medha Patkar. She has been awarded different kind of prizes. She started with opposing the Narmada Dam because of the rehabilitation issue. That's not a bad thing. In fact, the people should be rehabilitated properly. But the issue was not in fact rehabilitation. They wanted to stop building any dam in the country. There is a strong international organizations and funding for stopping any big dams. But big dams have changed the face of Western world agriculture, both in United States and also in Europe and in also China. This anti-dam agitation has done quite a lot harm for Indian environment quite for some time. So anyway, Indian government or the state governments has done well. They have completed the Narmada project. I give you another example that how this environmental politics is harming Indian development. There is a hill in Orissa. This hill, there is a bauxite ore. Bauxite is the source for aluminum, which is the most important material for development, different kind of industrial goods. Now, in this Nilgiri Hills, Orissa, that is where this bauxite ore is available, the Vedanto and Indian big mining group wanted to extract the ore. There lives a group of tribals, Kond tribals, and all the environmental impact assessment was done. It was cleared by the environmental process. The issue went to the Supreme Court of India. There also it was cleared initially from an environmental point of view. But then it was brought in a different perspective that these hills are worshipped as God, and these Kond tribals, they live a very sustainable life in this forest and others, so this can't be destroyed. And it was permitted by Indian courts and then by a group of Indian academics. Some committee was formed and the mining was stopped. Who were happy for this? The Kond tribals? No. Because Kond tribals live a very poor life. Their very quality of life is very low. But it was much propagated by the Western environmentalists. And another happy nation was the China, because China is our competitor of production of aluminium. So this kind of environmental politics is hampering Indian development issues in a different way. I am just giving one or two examples, but there are many so. And problem is that now this environmental politics, this climate change and this sustainability has taken a role of a religion. There is a little girl, she was a school girl at the age of 13, and she was in fact little autistic. She suddenly started to say that world is going to hell because of this climate change and others. Anyway, a school girl may talk like this, but she was given so much publicity. She was taken to country after country, made the head of the states. She is not a very prodigy. She is not knows nothing about the environmental science or climate science, but a kind of preaching make her a climate hero. So this is a very serious situation in today's environmental debates and things. The reason the scientific understandings are going back. It's a kind of religious thing that world is going to hell, climate change is destroying the world, so forget everything about it. And so our resources for development, our resources for food production, our resources for producing more electricity for common people, more housing for common people, these focuses are being shifted for some kind of climate activities. This is a very serious issue of environmental politics, and sadly the Western world, mostly their governments, the corporate houses, their different kind of this social media groups, all are preaching this kind of a religion of environmentalism, which is a very serious thing for developing worlds. And we have to remind Mrs. Indira Gandhi's talk in 1972 that only through more development we can make a better environment in the country, as Western world has done. Initially they gone through a stage of pollution, but now Western countries' environment is very good and their quality of life is also good. So we have to discuss these things at different level of policy, different level of economic decisions, and also at different kind of ideas. As I discussed before, that we as a part of ancient civilization, we have a different understanding of nature. We think we have an organic relation with nature. So with the development process, there may be some initial impact of environment. We can save the nature and environment both together with the development activities. This should be the focus of our environmental politics. Thank you.